taking you behind the scenes of the National Institute for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence.
With unprecedented access to the scientists pushing boundaries and shaping our future, this show will take you to the cutting edge and beyond.
And whether you're an expert yourself or just science curious, this is the show for you.
Welcome to the Turing Podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of the Turing Podcast. I am Bea Gomes, your co-host, and today we have a new co-host who you might recognize her voice from the Too Long Didn't Read podcast, which if you haven't heard yet, you should go and listen. But today we have the wonderful Jessie Pierce with us. Hi Jessie.
Hi Bea, thank you so much for having me.
And Jessie and I have the absolute pleasure of having Becky Inkster and Mark Sheppard with us today. So Becky and Mark are co-founders of The Lab, which they will tell us a little bit about later. No spoilers yet. They're both neuroscientists. Becky is a self-employed digital mental health advisor working with the University of Cambridge and also an advisor to WISA. And Mark teaches computer science at the University of Kent and is also a musician and a producer. So welcome both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
So before we get into all of the nitty-gritty, could you start by telling us a little bit about yourselves, about your past, and how you got here?
Okay, in 3 sentences, here we go. Okay. Originally, I'm from Toronto, Canada, or just outside. I did my degree in Toronto in psychology. I've always been interested in mental health, and that journey took me across the pond to Oxford and Imperial, UCL, and then eventually Cambridge. And yeah, my love for mental health and neuroscience, music, especially hip hop, kind of led me to where I am today. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah, right. Really, I like that. Yeah, very good. For me, I'm more of a checkered past in a way. I've done all sorts of different things, from genetics, pathology, pathogen research, computer science, EEG, coding, all sorts of stuff for the past few years. Mostly based in Cambridge initially, and then now live in sunny Eastbourne, which is really nice and very chill, but very far away from anything else, which is why I drive a long way to Kent to teach the computer science over there. But in a sense, I've kind of gradually got this feel of looking for helping people out, basically. I think with all the work I've been doing, and actually drawing from lots of different parts of my past work, but it kind of focuses itself into perception of ultrasonic sound in the brain. That's what my PhD was about as well, and transmission and of ultrasonic tags and decode and all sorts of effects like that, which actually got me into mental health indirectly as well. So I'm interested in the effects of the environment on people's brains and their mental health.
So how did you two meet? How did this collaboration start? We know exactly.
The moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Addenbrooke's Hospital, Cambridge. Mark was wearing a meerkat t-shirt.
Very long hair as well.
Long hair.
Yeah.
We met for a coffee. We just had so much in common in terms of everything from molecular biology all the way up to music. And yeah,
it was like a recommendation before we actually met. And so my friend Tim I think it was the assistant dean in Dundee basically at one point, but he's a professor in Cambridge. He happened to come into, I was working at Cambridge computing department initially, and then he came in. I was just introduced him, and we started to talk, and it was on his last day there. He said, "You should meet Becky Inkster and Akeem Soule." So I thought, who are these people? You know? So we arranged to meet in Addenbrooke's Hospital in a little Costa coffee place, and that's how it all started. Now I initially came in to do the website for Hip Hop Psych and do all the SEO work for that. So we went from like being page 94 or whatever down to being page 1 within a couple of weeks. And so
we explained though.
Oh yeah,
so we wrote an article, Hip Hop Psych, me and Akeem, and it went viral, and I had no idea what that meant. So I just it was over 1 million, became 9th of most times on Cambridge University
in about
website.
4 nanoseconds.
And in a weekend. And so I was like, Mark, we need your help. We need a website. We need this now. And yeah, it was viral. XXL magazine. It was viral everywhere.
It went crazy.
So that's kind of the first thing that you did to help us with that.
Made a website, and then we went from there. And then I kind of then started filming. You're doing various different things for Hip Hop Psych and for YouTube as well. And it was kind of more tech support talk. And then I eventually did my PhD after that point. And then we kind of thought, and it grew organically in a way, didn't it?
Neuroscience.
Yeah, neuroscience just came together. And we thought, that literally December, wasn't it?
Yep.
Last December.
And I think one of the key things is that we were like, let's buy a headset, like an EEG portable headset. And so we did. We chipped in halfway, which is kind of unusual. Normally you get a grant, but we're just like, let's put our own cash into it. And then I went around in the underground and I put this portable EEG, amongst all these other Londoners. And I was just scanning my brain, how the sound was impacting my brain. And so we had the kit. And so then I started going to Sainsbury's and going
everywhere,
to all these places. Any opportunity just to explore my own brain.
So you got lots of data, and then we start collecting like environmental sound as well to see because I do a lot of work with infrasound below 20 hertz and ultrasound above 22 hertz, 22 kilohertz, I should say, and look at the impact of that. So we're collecting this data, but actually on the underground as well. So we can collect EEG data and to see what the brain's doing as well. And I started writing lots of code to try and analyze. We'd be trying to get all this code out. And then we started thinking, this is interesting because we can start looking at moments and people and the events in people's lives as well. So George
the poet.
Yeah, it's all organic. I mean, none of this is planned. Is it?
No, exactly. And so I took the headset to George the poet, who's a really kind guy. And he had us on the BBC show that he does. And so I just put it on his head and he freestyled to do it like a Tupac rap on the rap. Sorry, I've got a cold. On the anniversary of Pac's death. And you could see his brain waves in real time. His delta wave was going up and he couldn't sustain his flow state, so it'd come back down. But just being there in person, it felt real. Like the data, even in the play mode, where you could just see it as a visualization, it was very powerful.
Really interesting. And it opened a lot of more questions in terms of what's happening at this moment. And then you started playing around with creative flow and delta wave activity versus alpha wave activity. And then we sort of thinking, well, in terms of we talked to creatives and Alex as well, Alex Mechanical and dancing as well, and those kind of, and we thought we can apply this to many different scenarios. And then people just kept turning up and saying, well, do you want to try the headset on? So it was a bit weird to start with. You think we've got a headset and just put this whole headset on, we'll scan your brain. But they were more interested in terms of, it kind of threw a lot of different bits of jigsaws up of a humanistic picture, which is that's what triggered us. So again, it's been a crazy ride since December, hasn't it? Or before that point, in fact. So basically, December is when we started to actually coalesce the idea of the lab. But before that point, it was just getting odd bits of data and thinking, this is really interesting, and playing around with it. So, and again, in a sense, it's more being exploratory, but there's been no, in a way, I suppose we can be looking at mental health as a bigger picture, but actually with this, it's actually going to the microcosm in terms of what's going on in a person's brain at that particular moment.
Mm-hmm. And we thought with George, like he's such a professional, he's almost like a wordsmith athlete, that signal was so strong because he's so good. Yeah. But then we had Charlie, so this lady who does street dance, especially with elderly groups in council estates, and we just said, choose your moment. We're always guided by people. And she came in and she was just like, here's my video. She knew exactly what she wanted. Exactly. She's like, at the 8-minute and 12th second, you're going to see my brain do something. I don't know what it's going to do, but it's going to do something. Because this video she took was to kind of tug at the heart and purse strings of the funders to say, we need more funding because it was coming to an end. So she said, I just want to see myself watching this video. And I asked the question, how would you feel if there was no money to continue the dance to the elderly people at the session? And the responses are really sad and it's difficult. And so we see it even in play mode, which is just a kind of aggregated visualization of the channels. We saw just all of the waves, all 5 just crash, completely crash way below what any of them were before. Yeah. And that was, she was saying, it makes me feel so emotional. And then boom. So I think that was a big point for us because it wasn't just like George the Poet. It was everyday people, their brains, it's all on the same plane.
It was a bit of a catalyst for what we're doing now in a way, because just basically from that moment, it just kind of blew up in terms of what we can look at and different emotions, different areas we can address as well. But we're not going out and saying we've got to have one of this and we got to get every kind of mental state, etc., or anything, or in creative flow. It just happens people just turning up because it's just quite a lot of interest. But I think the Charlie, when we look at Charlie, even in play mode, it basically raises some very interesting questions.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. One last thing about Charlie. You then look at her data, like just the peaks of certain waves. Like at what point in that, like 10-minute video did she have her highest theta or her lowest theta or highest delta lowest? And then you can go into the data that way and ask questions. So I said, like, okay, her highest theta isn't in that moment, in that window that she said something magical was going to happen. So then we were like, I was calling Mark. I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? And I looked into the video on my own and she's mentioning Elsa. So Charlie's talking about Elsa. I'm like, Mark, who's Elsa? Like, we've got to figure out, because at 8 minutes, or like at the 7-minute mark is Elsa. Yeah. It's like, it's just, her brain's on fire. And yeah, so then Charlie said, well, Elsa is like the elderly community lead. She's the one who got all the women together into the space. So she is really the glue of the community. Yeah. So it was really neat to see the waves at different points, either through the data and asking Charlie or Charlie telling us when to look in the data.
Yeah. And that was really quite exciting in that way as well, because it has so many impacts in terms of, again, it's looking at people as people. It's these individuals. That's what's important. I think the other thing we look at in general neuroscience is more about aggregates, and it's just the homogenization of data to make an average. Like if somebody likes cheese or doesn't like cheese, it's yes or no. And like 29 people like cheese, therefore everybody likes cheese, but that 30th person doesn't like cheese. So again with this, it's looking at these interesting aspects from an individual at that particular moment. That's what it's this. It's just. I think it's a really privileged position to be into, because it's actually, it's somebody sharing their innermost thoughts. And that's the real, the kind of the real moment of humility for us in terms of, wow, this is fantastic.
It's very intimate.
Yeah, very intimate. You don't get that with the standard EEG experiment where you go, put this big headset on,
the gel.
But also gel and all this kind of stuff, and then behave normally,
Yes, with this massive headset.
Yeah.
Behave normal.
It's the opposite.
It's the opposite. Yeah. So the thing of the technology we've been using as well, it's very kind of lightweight, and it doesn't get in the way of normal life in that respect. So that's why we're using this particular, brand of EEG headset. Is that it's like an everyday tool that we can use to kind of, as a kind of opening, it's almost like an opening gambit for a conversation. It starts, it's like the tech itself actually, so well, it's kind of, I can see my brain, you can see your brain waves, etc. But from that point, you can delve deeper into the data later on if we wanted to do that, or just purely for curiosity and say, what are we seeing with this? Like George the poet, like Charlie, it's like it's interesting things happening at key moments which are unique to that person.
So this is all really interesting, and you guys opened up so many questions that we need to talk about, but I think our listeners are going to be a little bit confused because we've mentioned the lab, but you've not told us what the lab is and what are you working on. And also, what are the plans for now? Because you said this was all very organic. Just wanted to reel us back a little bit before we go into the data and everything.
I think we moved at 1,000 miles per hour anyway.
Yeah, exactly. At the pace of trust, but always like 1,000 miles per hour.
So now a little bit back. What's the lab, and tell our listeners so that they can follow the rest of the conversation.
Drop me in it now. Well, the lab, I think, in terms of the history of the terminology of the lab, might be interesting to talk about. In terms of hip hop. In fact, take it back to the lab. That kind of,
I get it.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, it's a term often used in hip hop, like the lab, like that kind of stuff. But I think we sort of
broader than that.
It's broader, and our clever thing was that you put an alpha and a beta in the lab, because then it's EEG. Those are the waves, like alpha, beta. Yeah. So we thought
we've got the branding early on.
Branding. We nailed the branding.
It's the most important part. Right?
Oh well, the merch. Just wait for the merch. The merch is coming at the end of the podcast. You have to wait for that.
Drop the mic moment at the end. But in terms of the lab, it's more about it's exploratory, and I think it's also curiosity led in a way. But looking at different levels of human experience in terms of, obviously, things like play mode, as we said before, with George the poet and Charlie, and even Alex Mechanical as well. See what's going on at a key moment, and identifying key moments. And then we've got the data science part behind this as well, which actually then we can use machine learning, because she just use standard kind of EEG analysis, etc., to find exactly what's going on as a deep dive, a granular deep dive. And then other things on top of that, kind of looking at Gen AI for creativity processes as well. So basically externalizing your thoughts into maybe a screen or changing music, but it's more kind of, that's also play mode as well, but that opens bigger questions. So in a sense, the lab is more of a, I wouldn't say think tank, that's kind of too broad a respect, but it's more about analysing human experiences. I think that's what we're looking at, moments. And that kind of broadly, you drill down, it's looking at a human being's personal moment, which is actually important to them. It could be anything. And it's almost like curating and collecting those in a way, but then answering bigger questions, a bit opening narratives as well to more difficult questions, I think.
So it's not a physical lab.
No,
it can be.
It can be, yeah.
It can be.
There's also we're looking at things like pop-ups and being more outreach and public facing as well, to talk about neuroscience, actually to get people thinking about their own personal moment, and that's the important thing as well. So initially, on one level, we're looking at raising awareness about neuroscience, rather than this thing somebody does in a lab with a white coat somewhere and put stuff on the head and big jelly blobs on the head and stuff. But it's more kind of outreach. And again, looking at music as an opening from this, opening at Gambit, is that he can actually get connections with people and find out what is their thing, and what thing are they connected to, what's important to them.
Yeah, what do they want to learn about themselves, really? Yeah. So it could even be an object, a photo, but often it's music. People want to explore something inside them because they have a connection to a song, or they want to sing something or dance after experiencing a song. So it's really accessible. Everyone has a moment. Everyone has something that they want to just tap into a little bit more deeply. And so that's why it's sacred to us, just to show them their brain waves. That moment is also really important to be there present with them. We are in the middle of we've sent a headset now to a country, to an anonymous person, so we can still have a moment even if we're a million miles away from the individual. And so one such person wants to listen to I Love the Way You Lie by Eminem. So the person's going to scan themselves, which is really empowering, and it has a lot of autonomy to that, when we can walk through, okay, this is how you do this, you can record the information, and we'll guide you through any kind of meaning ethically. We work with other people who they want to scan themselves every day, or almost at least once a week, and they're really keen to do questionnaires and really get into like their social anxiety and perform publicly over the span of a year and just see how their brain changes. So it's a privilege to have access to that kind of data, and the amount of data.
Enormous amount of data.
Yeah, but to be very ethical, for us, that's like at the core of what we do, transparency, explainability. We don't say that AI is going to tell us answers unless the individual wants to engage with an AI option of, we can explore their data across time using AI if they wish, but it's only to identify additional patterns that are relevant to the individual or that they might want to find out more. So there's like different levels of the lab, and it's any experience. We're always guided by the individual. We never, ever say, can you do this? Like tap dance, do this, da-da-da. It's
it's not a circus. Yeah.
No. And that's what's beautiful about it. It's organic. So every step of the way, we've just been, Alex Mechanical, 2-time body popping champion in the UK. We asked him if he wouldn't mind sitting down and showing his popping skills, because we had just done the Charlie stuff where the elderly based people were often sitting down doing their street dance. And we wanted to inspire that community, because you can still sit down and your brain can be all over the place and doing these wonderful things. So that was connected to that. Then I went on a school trip for my daughter, and I met this amazing guy who ran the Paralympic Games for London, and he was, doing one of the activities. So again, it's like chair-based things. These connections just started to grow.
It's also
wild.
with the data as well, showing individuality, but also a shared humanity. That's the interesting thing with this. So we're looking at people's baseline levels of EEG output. Say, obviously, when people are not doing anything in their own quiet space, and then relating that to the moment, actually the scan moment they're kind of expressing at that period of time. So we can actually look for differences, or actually across the board, you're starting to see similarity in certain different aspects as well. So again, creativity actually, it might actually show obviously lots of the delta wave activity as well. The creative flow work is showing similarities, but it's interesting that it's showing unique individuality as well, which is actually really good, because I think in this day and age as well, it's when we kind of, it's less about the individual and more about the mass of people, etc. It's coming back to individuality again, and actually it's a great way of focusing and saying what's important to me. I am important as well. So this is also part of the lab's ethos in that respect.
And it's very much anti things like neuromarketing. So I put the headset on myself and I was at Piccadilly Lights, and there was like advertising, like gigantic advertising. And there was a cat video, and they're obviously selling stuff. But I looked at my real-time alpha waves, and I was like, aw, cat, alpha. And then, aw, cat, alpha. And I was like, oh, creepy. So it's like individual level, but not for bad purposes. That's why ethics is like crucial.
And it's not anything. It's not a diagnosis for anything we're looking at either. No way. It's more about how that moment is important for that particular person. So that's what we're looking at as well.
And allowing the person to also know themselves, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So would you say this is a form of therapy?
No, definitely not. Because with therapy, you need strong evidence base, you need clinical governance, you need clinical safety. All these types of things need to be in place. But I think for us, this is why it's a privilege, because people let us in, and we're often surprised that neuroscience and things like music and the power of those two in combination, you go deep fast with people. And for us, it's really important that someone can remain fully anonymous, and that we have complete trust and we keep our distance. It's really important. If people want to let us in, we will be let in, but definitely these are sensitive topics. So we have to just be extremely just respectful.
So you've been with all these people through all of these emotional moments, right? But how has it impacted you?
A lot.
A lot. That's a good question.
It is because, I was just recently giving a talk at Royal College of Psychiatrists. They had a national trainee event, and they were talking about, the psychiatrists, how they take in a lot. And all that they were talking about, it was very similar in ways and at times, because some individuals will let you in so deeply that it's such a privilege and an honor. But then you're kind of, you see the world differently, and you can't unsee things because you see humanity and all of the things around them that aren't in plain sight. So you start to get to know people much more deeply, sometimes more in ways that you want to protect their privacy and stuff like that. But it takes a while to get out of that kind of space because it's such a privilege.
Yeah, because I think also it opens up more ethical review of the work we're doing as well. That's because it's really important. I think when you come into this kind of space, it really opens your eyes in terms of people and problems or worries, concerns, etc., or even just creativity, etc. So, thing is, it's given us more of an insight in how we can protect that data as well, and also how we can protect the individual. Actually, looking at in terms of, I think we're very protective, aren't we, in terms of the work itself? Because I guess if it was a case of if it ever got hacked or anything like that, all the data we'd just basically just burn the data. That's all gone. We're not interested in commercialization of this because that's definitely we're definitely not going that angle. But it's more about. It's getting further insights. But actually, it allows us to get to, on the research side, actually to get to deeper questions about all this work and this collected data as well, which is surprising. Since December, it's getting more granularity in what we're doing as well, and also more in depth analysis and question. I mean, more questions being asked in terms of in terms of ethics, and that's why we're looking at protecting that as well. Mm-hmm. So it's opening almost like a whole new field of ethics, isn't it? In a way.
Well, yeah, and we can't make any announcements just yet, but we do have some plans, and one of those will be to work closely with regulators and standard associations to show every single step of the way, or every issue or potential challenge, so that we're aligned with regulators, moving at a lightning speed and going into some of the deepest, most sacred moments, really. So it's very much at the epicenter of all of the kind of the tech, the mental health, the regulatory neuro rights kind of stuff. So
and I think the whole of the lab is getting a more emotional weight over time as well, and it's really a privilege. I think that's the thing. It's always brings tears to your eyes, but it's a real privilege to work with everybody you work with as well. This is real, you know.
In the connections. So like going back to the chair-based dance with the elderly, and then Alex Mechanical showing chair-based neural activity, and then dancing the domestic violence person from the anonymous person to the anonymous country that we've sent the headset out of trust. Dance was a way of expressing this person's feelings after listening to the I Love the Way You Lie track. So there's a lot of stuff. We're always guided by people, and it can be lots of fun stuff too. So to lighten the mood, we put the headset on Bobby, and Bobby's like, I want to walk around my hometown. I know a lot of people, so this should be interesting. And 3 minutes into it, a bird poops on Bobby. So we have the world's first data set, I think.
Of EEG and bird poop.
What happens?
Oh, you have to invite us back.
Yeah, for that one.
We're not giving away that one. That's a big one.
That's a big one.
They tried their best.
It's a shocker. It really is. You know,
we need a big reveal for that.
Well, it's interesting to see even with Bobby looking at social interactions, and even with when he was approaching a person again just in the street, you could see this anticipatory kind of heart rate go up. You can actually see sort of brain activity, even gyroscopic data. You could, basically all these things changed in pre the event, during the event, and post the event as well, and how this kind of, and so even a social interaction type level, you can get interesting data out of just interacting with people in the street as well. Because
the person actually, again, this is anonymous, like we can name Bobby, but not the other person, kind of yanked his arm, and we were just kind of trailing behind going like, okay, now what? Yeah. And good 8 minutes goes by where they're having a private conversation. We're about 10 meters away. Yeah. We're still able to collect the data. We would wipe it if he said, please wipe it. But they had a really hard conversation, and it left Bobby in a difficult place afterwards. And we weren't trying to even find stuff like that. Yeah. But again, life just throws curveballs. Yeah. And so, we were able to look at that data, and he discovered something really personal through the other person. And it was difficult news for him to digest. So,
so it's interesting from the data from even, from the heart rate, gyroscopic data, etc. It's interesting as she could actually get a document. It's a document of that particular moment in time. Mm-hmm. And so it opens up lots of different questions and angles you can actually approach this work with as well. So I think even from a social interaction to something more intense or more creative, etc., it can throw in a lot of emotions. So a lot of these are really personal to that person, but It's like with the sound recording. Basically, everything is in that sound recording. For example, we're talking now. The shape of the room, the aircon, all this kind of stuff will be in that recording. It's somewhere in that recording. Same thing with the EEG as well. So everything is there. You might not explain it exactly, but it's all there. So it's a signature of that moment, which is really interesting.
And that's why it's important to have that person's feedback to say, like, when we find something in the data, it's like, what is this? And then they can piece it together, or they can say, please come with me to this location. It's a very important space for me, and scan me here. Or just all these different ways that we end up where we are, but it's always the person who helps us figure out when and why and where, and all these really helps our understanding of data rather than just noise.
I think otherwise, if you were doing this as a standard kind of research project, you'd be trying to formulate an experiment, and they have a certain number of control groups and this and that, etc. And then you'd be asking one question, like back to the cheese thing: do you like cheese or don't like cheese? But in this respect, we're actually finding out interesting angles for a question which we might not have even thought of in the first place. And then in that, as ask more questions, you get more answers, but actually it creates a better picture of what we're trying to achieve. Because obviously the brain, even when we looked at it in the EEG headset, it's only going to be the output of that particular brain region at a certain time. So the information is there, but you can't always interpret it. But in terms of when you ask a questionnaire, I talk to the person, that they can fill in the gaps. That's why, but when we're looking at a longitudinal study over a year and looking at social anxiety and filling questionnaires, how you're feeling, etc., and then getting lots of data, that we have a better picture of that individual over that year. And it may be a case of the individual might get less anxious or maybe more anxious or not. The outcome is not important. It's the journey in this. The journey is the important step in
and
this.
Comparing, so for example, 2 songs, that won't be the same for for different people. So it's really interesting when you can compare those 2 conditions within one person, because everyone has their own things that will move them in different ways. So if I chose 2 songs for all of us here, we wouldn't get the same effect. It's going to be different for everyone. So that's why it's important that the person chooses exactly what's happening. You know, if it was like pet a cat, pet a dog, someone who's allergic to cats, well, that's no good.
No.
Their data is totally different. They've got a reaction.
You get an anaphylactic shock measured.
We are all different. So I think that's the beauty of it. And that's what gets us away from traditional science and research, that, you know, it's like, okay, we're going to stick with what you want us to do because we want to see the biggest, strongest effect. Whereas normally it would be listen to song A and B, all 50 people, or, you know.
Yeah, and then use some fancy kind of statistical analysis to say, I can see a slight difference in the song A and song B. But if that moment or that song has a meaning to a person, then you're going to see a bigger effect. And that's the most important thing. I think in neuroscience, a lot of the data, nuances get lost in the data, just averaged. And I think that's where we're missing the point of neuroscience in general and experience.
Yeah.
So we've kind of talked about the impact for people on a personal level. What do you think or hope might be the impact on a broader scale, say in 5 to 10 years or any time scale, of your work? What are you hoping for?
Well, it's very public facing, and 5 to 10 months, maybe, because we're fast. We don't have time. Can't mess around with all
Then we
this.
retire. That's it. It's all over.
But well, just step back a bit. So our plans, we know what we are now. We've done a lot of piloting on people in different situations, so we understand our purpose. A lot of that will be about disseminating it to the public. One example would be, having exhibitions in public spaces where people can put headsets on, learn about individuals, see their brainwaves in different moments, and just allow people to experience what others have experienced, and then perhaps have a lab space where we then bring people in for their own experiences. But I think step one is the public, isn't it? That to show people examples of the works that we've done. And I think they will connect with that because immediately they'll think, what's my moment? And could I explore that somehow?
Yeah.
But And
on the back end of this, the data science thing is developing the coding, etc. Now we're going to analyze data as well. If the individual wants it to be analyzed, that's the next step. But also that all curation of that data, the ethics in curating that data as well, that's all being developed as we're moving along now. So that's enhanced by regulators, advisors, etc. to get this exactly right as we want to get it. Because I think the danger with this type of work is that people see, so it's a diagnosis, it's this, it means I'm less than. It's almost like getting away from the concept of gamifying something and saying, well, it's like my delta wave activity is better than your delta wave activity and your alpha wave sucks, that kind of thing. It's like getting away from that. So ethics and regulation are going to consolidate that in the background. So we get it right. It's even working at 1,000 miles per hour. We've covered a lot of ground in a very short space of time, but everything is consolidated now. So they've got a front end play mode, as it were, the public facing side of things, and the back end data science. And I'm going to get that right as well in terms of what we're looking at in terms of analyzing this data and what inferences we might look at, looking at pattern recognition, etc. But what we can do with that data that is ethical in relation, that gives us what they call AI, ethical AI aspect, and Gen AI. We're getting that bit of the work right in the background before we go any further. But it's in a way we're doing the R&D on the computer, the data science and the background, but it's more about getting that right. So we don't, so it keeps everything ethical and also respects people. And so that's the whole point with this as well. It's respecting the individual. Because again, it is a privilege to be doing this.
Yeah, and linking to have R&D with regulators, that's just unusual, like that early stage. So we have plans to roll out globally. So Toronto is August, Singapore in September. So we'll be able to talk about neuro rights and a lot of the work that we've discovered. South Africa in February. And so that's our 5-month plan. That's a world tour.
I'll get some T-shirts as well.
And the country, the anonymous country with the anonymous person is not one of those. So, it's global. We're moving fast.
Wow.
So,
Here you are.
Ethically.
This is incredible. So one thing that we want to ask, because, you've mentioned some names, but we wanted to know, what are the name drops that you can share with us?
Drop those names.
Yeah.
Do you want to go for
it? I think one name I could mention is Rudy Sarzo from his ex-Whitesnake, Ozzy Osbourne. He's in Quiet Right. He's one of the founder members of Quiet Right as well. We have chats. We've been having chats every Wednesday practically on neuroscience, quantum entanglement, and tunings, all sorts of recording.
Live chats.
Live chats about stuff. I know we talk about, kind of rock and roll mythology and etc. And the people obviously the whole background of the people he's met as well. But again, that was only kind of a chance meeting, just basically a chance conversation via LinkedIn. And we just started talking, and that was it. So the thing with this, even conversations like that open a lot of other avenues in terms of somebody in the kind of a rock metal genre, but actually seeing the world over time and actually getting more and more interesting conversations and thinking, that's an interesting concept we can actually use for the lab as well, or basically it just gets you thinking more deeply about other aspects which you might not have thought about as well. But I talk to lots of musicians, and in the past I've produced mixed Medieval Babes, Angie Brown, all sorts of different people like that as well. So again, I've been in music production for 30 years, so I just kind of talk to musicians, and things happen, I guess. So that's only one name drop.
I thought it was pretty good.
I thought it was quite good. Yeah,
I'm not going to drop names.
No name and shame.
I'll anonymously say one person who's like, I don't know, superstardom, big name, approached me to work.
A-list.
I guess I don't know what A-list is.
Yeah.
One of the biggest.
Yeah.
One of the biggest. Approached me to work with the person, and because of ethics, I turned down the person. I did offer to scan the person's brain, but it all kind of...
As you do.
That's just your chat up guy.
It's just like,
can
I see your brain?
Yeah.
That's really funny. Yeah, I got to be careful with that because, names I can drop just more casually. Kilakella, so he's an amazing guy. Beatboxer, up there, top 5 easily in the world. And when I met him, I was like, I want to scan your brain. And he's just like, okay, I need to ask my girlfriend if that's okay. So I was like, oh my
Consent.
God, different world. Note to self, music industry, do not think like neuroscientists. So yeah, I learned that quickly. And Harry Shada, he's also a great guy. So those are names that I'll be working with, like moving forward. But the superstardom person turn them down. So anyone who works at the lab, they can know that, we have integrity and we're willing to turn down some of the biggest names. Yeah.
We'll turn down anybody.
So if you get rejected, don't take it personally.
Exactly.
But say yes when she asks to scan your brain.
But then this is the details we want. Who was your favorite person to work with and why?
Ooh. Holy smokes.
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
You don't need to say the same person if you have different people.
I think everybody's got their own. I think everybody's got their own. Everybody's a favourite. That's the thing. It's like Quality Street. You can use every like all of them. The purple one, the nutty one, that kind of
caramel
stuff.
gets stuck in your teeth.
I love that one as well.
You do?
Yeah, I like that one. But the thing is, it's like that. Everyone is a favourite. I can't limit one because everyone is a revelation in a way. That's the thing. It's like, it's like drop the mic moment. It's like, wow, this is like everything every person we've actually interacted with and worked with has been interesting. It's all interesting.
I agree. For me, it would be the person who sang the chorus a cappella. It was just beautiful to hear a voice. It's very refreshing to hear like just someone outside of the music industry, and you could just sense like the beauty of the tone and the vulnerability and allowing us to listen. And then being with that individual, going into an environment that was difficult, but it was beyond a privilege, just to experience that and to know that connections can be really deep, really quickly, if you do it in the right way. So yeah, for me, that was like a big one. But they all of them are just like unique because they just tell us what they want us to do, where to go.
Then you just never know who you're going to meet next. That's the interesting thing. It's like, again, the individual is important. That's what's magical about it.
We haven't scanned animals. I put the headset.
That's so random.
Does it work on animals?
It's just the fur gets in the way,
I put it on my cat's head. Oh, sorry, kitten. So it didn't quite fit. I thought I'd lighten the mood again. Just
and what was she thinking?
She was cool with it because she was in heat. So she's like, I'm okay about this. Okay. I'm not mad at you. But just wanted to lighten the mood a little bit.
That was great. That was a great segue.
Do you think it was spite?
Yeah.
And listeners, we are not recording our brains on this. We should have.
Yeah.
We should have headsets.
Well, I think I'm more interested now in the animal scan. I think you can make a lot of money.
See, but no, Jessie, that's not our lane.
It goes on the merch angle, doesn't it? After that,
the merch. Should we tell them about our business model? So our business model is very, very different. So our goal is not to make money, or to be corporate, or to put profit and power over people. So we're going to sell merch and just make money off the merch and then help people. So we thought we'd start with tissue boxes, lab, because there's always a moment. So we've got the tissues, and then Mark, your idea,
and tea cozies, and also wedges to put on the door, etc., and all sorts of things, and even hats, even all sorts of funky stuff, and also even doing a 3D output of your brain output, for example.
Well, that's a real example.
That's a real example. That's a real example. Or the other one was like alpha floss, flossing with
like
alpha,
dental floss.
Dental floss, but alpha floss.
We're looking for things that are on the comeback. Hopefully people floss already, but more the tea cozy.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like, it's like, bringing the tea cozy back into fashion. I think we've achieved it.
I think that's it. You can wear it. It can keep your teapot warm.
Yeah.
Although, given your background, I don't think rap musicians are known for their tea cozies.
No, but we're bigger than rap. This is like the world. Yeah.
The world needs a tea cozy.
It has to come back.
That's beautiful.
That's the soundbite for this one. The world needs a tea cozy.
Yeah.
That's very Spinal Tap, that was, isn't it? Yeah.
So where can people find you and learn more about your work?
Yes. So this is all very new, like December kind of in the making. So
very, very new.
We are going to get socials, the lab in some kind of way. But of course, email. We have a page on my website at the moment. So it's just kind of hanging off. And then, of course, we'll get all that in place. But
what's your website?
Okay. Well, www.beckyinkster.com. beckyinker.com. So BECKYINKSTER. Just click on the lab tab and get in touch. If you want to be scanned, get in touch if you have a moment,
We're adding bits and pieces as to the lab page as we go along, aren't we?
It's like if you build it, it will come. So we're not really driven by socials or anything like that. Because to be honest, when we've told people or worked with people, every time we get like an intrigued kind of like, oh my gosh, tell me more. I've never heard anything like this. Because it's definitely world first. Absolutely.
Exactly. And I think also with the lab socials we're going to introduce as well, it's like getting that in line with the ethical review as well. I think that's important as well. So before we launch any kind of Instagram kind of thing, everything else, we want to just get all the ethics right. So actually we're posting the right kind of thing as well.
We'll just put the merch up. We'll start with the Tea Cozy.
Yeah.
People can check it out.
The Alpha Floss,
Always start with the
TM,
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for being our guest. Thank you, Jessie, for co-hosting this with me.
Thanks.
And thank you for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. The show is hosted by me, Bea Costa-Gomez, Ed Calstry, Joe Dungate, Christina Last, and Anika York. Music for this podcast is produced by Jam and Sun. You can listen and follow via the link in the description or by searching Jam and Sun on Instagram.